Welcome, everybody, to today's Learnico Debate Championship final round. I would request all the participants to turn on their camera so we can see you. Thank you, Anchit. Thanks, Vincent. I can see Anushka, Soham, Arunima, Advaitya. Great. So I can see all the participants for today's final round. Welcome, everybody. So first of all, round of applause for all of you for reaching to the final round of LQ Debate Championship. It's an achievement in itself. It's a big thing that you all are here and you have made it to the final rounds. Good job, guys. Very nice. Well done. Good evening, Mr. Naveen Taneja. How are you, sir?
Good evening, ma'am, and thank you for giving me chance
It's a
to be as
pleasure
a
to have
panelist.
you on board, sir. It's a pleasure to have you today for the final rounds.
Yeah, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Avik Kumar. How are you?
I hope you can hear me. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure for us. Good evening, Ms. Dipanshi Gupta. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. Hoping the same for you all.
Yes, we are very excited for today's round. Great. So before we can start with the competition, I would like to brief you all a little about Learnico, and then I would like to brief you all about today's educators, give you a little detail about everything before we can start the competition. But before that, I need a thumbs up from you all if you're excited for today's competition. Everybody excited? Good. Please do not worry. Do not be tense. Do not worry about winning or losing. Just give your best. Okay. Let's just enjoy the competition. Great. I hope you all can see my screen.
Of course, ma'am.
Great. I'm sorry, 1 second. My device is acting up. Just 1 second. I'm extremely sorry. Just give me 1 minute because I cannot see the screen. It's hanged, so I need a second. Great.
I think we can see the screen now. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So everybody, welcome for today's competition. It's the final rounds of the LQ Debate Championship. I'll tell you a little about Learnico and what we do. So we here at Learnico believe in communication. We strongly feel that communication is a very important life skill required for success in all the aspects of life. Learnico is conceptualized with the aim to impart these life skills through courses on debating. First of its kind, in-depth year-round detailed programs on debating and public speaking. We also love to teach kids because we're very passionate to teach kids about how to persuade people, how to have these basic debate skills and also public speaking skills that can help you persuade people and convince people to believe in your ideas and your concepts. We have online live classes and we have expert teachers on board with an optimum batch size of 6 maximum students in our batch. And we believe in teaching and progressing with each and every kid to see their progress and to make them learn the basic skills that you require right from an early age. Because we believe that in today's competitive world, all we need is the confidence to speak and to have these skills to proceed and in any career possible and to teach ourselves to be as confident as possible and give our opinions firmly, right? Also, we have many students from different schools, such as from Mumbai, we have students coming from Cathedral and John Kinnan, Dhirubhai Ambani, Thakur Public School, Jamna Bai Narsi. From Bangalore, we have students coming from NPS, Vibgyor High, Ryan International, Malia Aditi High International School, Dean's Academy, etc. From NCR, we have Heritage, Amity International School, Sri Ram, Gores International School, Shiv Nadar Modern School, etc. From other cities, we do have students coming from Eklavya, GIIS, Rachna, Zabar, Anand Niketan, Zydus, Udgam, etc. From Singapore as well, we have students coming from Raffles Institution, NPS, Yashin Sek School, GIIS, Marsiling Secondary School, and Singapore American School. So we feel really proud that we have progressed and we are successful in teaching kids how to debate. Today, we are fortunate enough to witness such amazing debaters coming on board and giving their speeches to us. Before we move ahead, I would like to introduce today's adjudicators. So I would firstly like to introduce Mr. Avik Kumar. Sir has over 10 years of experience in managing strategy and marketing for Wipro. He is an avid traveler with a passion for wildlife photography, and he is also a member of multiple debate clubs and has a keen taste in good books and music. We welcome you, Mr. Avik Kumar, and it's a pleasure to have you on board as an adjudicator for today's final round. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
sir.
much. Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you.
Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Naveen Taneja. Sir is an accomplished leader in education and has an experience of more than 25 years in leading several schools across the country. He is currently the principal of Heritage School. His keen interests lie in teachers training, career counseling, motivating the students in sports and co-curricular activities. It's an honor to have you, Mr. Naveen Taneja. Thank you, sir, for being on board with us.
Thank you, ma'am. And it's an honor for me also.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to welcome Ms. Dipanshi. Ms. Dipanshi is also a core faculty member at Learnico. She's a political science graduate from Gargi College, University of Delhi, and she's currently pursuing LLB from CLC DU. She has achieved a lot of laurels in academic and multidisciplinary co-curricular activities, including published research work at the age of 21. One of the highest honors she has received is Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma, former President of India, Gold Medal for all-round excellence. She served as the President of the Debating Society of Gargi College in 2019-20. She has judged more than 20 debating tournaments, participated in more than 100, and has won in more than 70 in varied competitions like debate, research writing, poetry, open mic, quiz, case study, creative designing, etc. She has worked in commerce and industry, the office of former Minister of State of Minority Affairs, Mr. Ninog Ering, Vaish Associates, Advocates, Students for Liberty, Global Youth, and the Armchair General. Thank you, Dipanshi, for joining us today as the adjudicator. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks a lot, and hoping this tournament will be an achievement for all.
Yes, it's going to be exciting. Now, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kushi. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I'm extremely passionate for debating. I have experience of more than 3 years in teaching kids across UK and India on how to debate and various public speaking skills. I have also judged several Indian Asian parliamentary competitions and urban debate league competitions in London. I've done my double masters in corporate law and arbitration, and I believe in having negotiation skills, and I have specialized in that field. Thank you, everybody, for having me on board, and it's a pleasure for me to witness such nice debaters today in the final round. Now, I would like all the speakers to just rename themselves as per the role of speakers that they have given. So all the participants, kindly rename yourselves as to Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Government Whip, your roles as you have. Vincent, so can you just write Vincent hyphen Prime Minister so that the adjudicators can also be aware of your name and details? Thank you, everyone. So proposition team, can you just tell me your number, LQ number? Proposition team?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I believe we are LQ2183.
Correct. LQ2183. And opposition team number is LQ2173. Am I correct? Thumbs up if that's right. Opposition team?
Ma'am, actually, we are 2173. The proposition.
Okay, so proposition is 2173. Am I correct? And opposition is 2183, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you. All right. Now, the Prime Minister for today's competition is Vincent from the government side. Then we have the Deputy Prime Minister. That's Anushka from the government side. And then Arunama Singh is the government whip. May I know who is going to give reply speech from your team, from the government side?
I'll be giving the reply speech.
So Vincent, you will be giving the reply speech from government side, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now from the opposition team, the leader of opposition is Advitya. The deputy leader of opposition is Vanchit. Then we have Soham as the opposition whip. May I know who is giving reply speech from your team?
I'll be giving out the reply speech.
Okay, so Advitya will be giving reply speech from the opposition side. All right, so I'm just going to repeat once again. From proposition side, that's the government side, we have Vincent as the Prime Minister, who is the first speaker. Then from the opposition side, we have Advitya as the leader of opposition, who will be the second speaker for today's competition. Then we have Anushka, who will be the third speaker for today's competition, and also the Deputy Prime Minister. Then we have Vanchit as the Deputy Leader of Opposition, also the fourth speaker for today's competition. After which we have Arunama Singh, who is the government whip, who will be the third speaker from proposition side. And then we have Soham, who would be the opposition whip and the last speaker from opposition side. Then we would have the reply speech from opposition team first. So Advitya, you would have to first give the reply speech of 4 minutes, after which we would have Vincent giving the last speech for today's competition. Am I correct? Great. All right, so let me quickly go through the rules for today's competition, after which if you have any doubts, you can raise your hands and ask. All right, so each individual, each debater will get 7 minutes to give his or her speech. All right, you would get 7 minutes to give your speech as per the Asian parliamentary format. Now, your first minute and your last minute of your speech will be your protected time, when you will not be asked any point of information from opponent. So in your first minute of your speech and last minute of your speech, the opponents cannot raise point of information to you. All right. Now, you can raise point of information to your opponents, but no counter questioning or counter answering allowed to point of information. And your point of information should be as quick as possible, should not exceed 15 seconds. All right. After which, if you want to raise another point of information, you can count 15 seconds in your mind and raise another point of information if you wish to. All right. It's on the opponent to accept it or reject it. So it's their right, they are within their rights to accept your point of information or to reject your point of information. Okay. Now about the reply speeches, there will be no point of information allowed in reply speeches. In reply speeches, you will get 4 minutes to give your speech, and you'll have to prove why your team has won according to you. And you have to give points as to why the other team has not won today's round. You, in your 4 minutes, will have to prove through your points, through your main points, as to why your team has won and why the other team has not won today's round. And you'll have to convince the adjudicators and the audience. Okay? Any questions apart from this? I'll share stopwatch. There won't be any claps from me. You'll have to see the stopwatch to time keep. All right? So I will not be interrupting your speeches. You will get extra 30 seconds if you have not finished your speech in 7 minutes. So you get extra great minutes, you let's say get extra 30 seconds. So for 7 minutes, 30 seconds, you can give a speech. But I would highly recommend do not go beyond 7 minutes, 30 seconds, because unfortunately, I'll have to mute you. Okay, so you get 7 minutes to give your speech, an extra 30 seconds to wrap up your speech in case you haven't finished. Okay, the judging parameters for today are you're judged based on your content, strategy, and style. So the adjudicators will not just be judging you based on your content today, but they'll also be judging you based on your presentation skills, the way you maintain your posture, hand gestures, eye contact, your debate structure, the role of speaker that you should follow as per the Asian parliamentary format, the rebuttals that you give, your preemptive rebuttals, the content, your valid reasoning, your evidence to prove your points, etc. All right. Towards the end, we will be announcing the winning team that makes it to the final, that has won the final round. And we will also be announcing the prize for the teams and also announce the best speaker for today's round. Now, let me tell you, best speaker can be from any team. Doesn't have to be just from the winning team. Okay, so you give your best. It's not about winning, losing. Just enjoy your speeches and give your best today. All right. And the adjudicators, please feel free if you have to turn off your video in case you want to grade them. Just towards the end, we will trouble you a little after the competition to turn on your video and give your views about the competition. Thank you. All right. Any doubts before I start? Any doubts from any speaker? Great. Please keep your camera on throughout. All the participants, make sure that your camera is on and you have good audio and with no background disturbance. All right? Great. So let me just share the stopwatch with you all, after which we will start with today's competition. So all the participants, make sure that you see the time and accordingly raise point of information. After first minute of the speaker, you can raise point of information. After 6 minutes, you need to stop raising point of information. All right, great. I would request Vincent to give me a thumbs up if you can see the stopwatch.
I can see the stopwatch, and am I audible, visible, everything okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
All
so
right,
shall I click
Vincent.
on?
So the motion for today's competition is this house would ban movies that glorify violence. I repeat myself, the motion for today's competition is this house would ban movies that glorify violence. All right, so with that, Vincent, the Prime Minister for today's competition, your time starts now.
Good evening, judges, friends in the opposition, and the spectators. The motion on the floor today is that movies glorifying violence should be banned. And as a proposition, we couldn't agree more. What kind of violence are we talking about here? Surely banning all movies with violence is impossible, because there's not a single movie which does not involve some or the other sort of violence. For sure, a slap or a kick does not qualify as violence which has to be censored or banned. So we have to define violence, or more specifically, the threshold which when crossed becomes perilous violence. Putting it in the simplest manner possible, how much violence is too much? The answer to the question is not as simple to the question. The point at which a movie is simply glorifying violence is subjective. You may find a movie gory and distasteful, whereas I find it exciting and thrilling. Moral philosophers faced with this question regarding war have spoken of a principle of proportion. That is, the good to be achieved or the evil prevented by a resort to violence should be greater than the value it destroys. What it means is that benefits of what you achieve should overcome the sacrifices you make. Applying this sort of measure to movies, one might say that violence is justified when no more of it is used than is needed to realize a work of art or entertainment. Basically, as soon as you realize that there's unnecessary violence in the film, it is glorifying violence. Then again comes the question whether a movie is glorifying violence or it's just recapitulating the horrific incidents of the past. For example, many war movies like Dunkirk, Saving Private Ryan, 1917, all great movies. I love them. All revolve around the dreadful occurrences of the world wars. This is not a movie glorifying violence. Glorification mostly comes in when the hero of the movie uses extensive unnecessary violence for vengeance. Let's talk about the movie Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde are partners in crime. Later in the movie, they are joined by another man, C.W. Moss. From conducting small heists, they become big robbers, where they even shoot an accountant in the face. The police eventually get hold of Moss. Moss's father tells the police that he would set a trap for Bonnie and Clyde in exchange of leniency for Moss. At the end of the movie, Bonnie and Clyde are driving down a lone road along a farm. They see Moss's father with a flat tire and try to help him, oblivious of the fact that there are many policemen hiding in the bushes. No sooner did they realize they stepped into a rabbit hole than they were sprayed with bullets. Take an objective standpoint to this. Some say it is one of the most gruesome 40 seconds of English cinema. I personally couldn't stand watching a couple, however many crimes they committed, being shot again and again till death without any due process of law. Was it necessary to use this much gore just to invite the viewer into the character's mind? You might say that otherwise the movie wouldn't have been a hit. I say, look at the bigger picture. By disguising cruelty and evil in films as attractive and engaging, it gives an incentive to the audience to deny the gruesome reality and avoid discomfort. Violent movies have become one of the biggest impact on teens. These are the years they go through drastic changes, not only physically but mentally. Research evidence has shown that exposure to violence on video games, television, movies increases the risk of violent behavior on the viewer's part, just as growing up in an environment filled with real violence increases the risk of violent behavior. Many of the movies targeted towards the teen audience depict intense scenes of violence. Any viewer, especially a teenager, can take notice of that violence and mirror it into their own lives, thinking it's cool or in style. However, violence in movies can be detrimental, especially at a time when you are forming your own values. It is difficult to trust who you listen to because at one side there's your parents telling you to learn good values and to practice them, and on the other side there's your favorite actor taking drugs and shooting guns just because their character requires them to do so. Teenagers that view violent movies on a regular basis are exposed to images that eventually lead to desensitization. They might not recognize this effect, but violent movies have been known to lead to bullying in schools or violent behavior at home. Studies have shown that aside from parents, movies play a top role in influencing the life of teens. When a teen watches a violent movie, they become more inclined to act out what they are seeing in their everyday life. This is not just limited to teens, but even grown-ups. Watching violent movies can also increase the aggressive behavior that leads to problems down the road in terms of getting into and even finishing high school. Movies are fiction, but teens will not pay any heed to that. If their friends think the movie is amazing, they think the movie is amazing. If their friends start behaving just like the actor, they'll start behaving like their friends, just for the sake of being relevant or fitting to the group. So the teens don't have any choice. As I said, the effects of movies are not only to the teens, but adults too. Watch a happy movie, you'll feel happy. Watch a sad movie, you'll feel sad. Watch a violent movie, your view of violence will change. You will become more lenient towards it. You will be biased when deciding what is considered violence and what is not. It is not that complicated, it's just human emotion. While you surely have an understanding of what is right and wrong, you may think that it's okay when you see someone using physical force to hurt another human being. Again, take an objective standpoint to this. An average person watches around 5,000 movies in their lifetime, a majority of these being violent. As we grow, we become desensitized to the extent that we think it's okay to see a bullet through the head, suicide, strangling, hanging. What movies glorifying violence have done is make values and ethics convoluted for us. If my favorite actor is using physical force to shut a person down, surely there isn't any problem because they know what they're doing. I'm not saying all movies involving violence should be banned, but just the ones which glorify violence and show violence for the sake of it. This has societal impact. Let us apply the principle of proportion here again. The good you seek to achieve should overcome the sacrifices of free speech and promoting art. This does not happen in these movies. Human history shows that society based on violence will not survive. So the fact that these movies are being made which glorify violence are promoting the culture of violence in the society. This violence will not stop within the four walls of the theater and will spread to the wider society. And in this case, the only way to do so is to ban movies which glorify violence. Thank you.
Great. Round of applause for the Prime Minister of Government. That's Vincent. Thank you, Vincent, for that amazing speech. Now, I would like to give 30 seconds to the adjudicators to score Vincent and take time. And I would also like to give 30 seconds for the other team to think about rebuttals. And then we go with the next speaker. All right. Now let's welcome the leader of opposition, Advitya. Advitya, give me a thumbs up if you can see the stopwatch. All clear? Great. So your time starts now.
26th April 2019. It was just another fine spring Friday in the year, except that that day, the Marvel Cinematic Universe released yet another one of its violent, glorifying movies, which became one of the biggest hits in the movie industry. If you don't know it by now, the Avengers Endgame. According to the proposition speaker, violence as much as necessary is fine, and over that is not okay. I ask who decides this and realize how subjective that is. Anyways, a movie that was, let's say, not necessary along the Prime Minister's term is fine and it's okay. I'm sorry that that movie brainwashed the children, it brainwashed the masses, it brainwashed me and millions of others. And I wish that those millions has heard the Prime Minister speak like he did today on that very dark Friday. Well, maybe then we all could have been saved. Greetings to one and all. My name is Aditya Das. I'll be acting as the leader of opposition for today's debate and speaking about why this House should not ban movies that glorify violence. What did the House infer from my very honest and true introduction? You might have asked yourself, what is he saying? Marvel is a kid's comic. That is not glorifying violence. That does not fall under necessary because it is entertainment to a large extent. Trust me, after hearing the Prime Minister defend the motion with such grit, I was amazed as to how an extremely vague blanket verb, glorifying, could be twisted into a stream of certain thoughts and ideas. Now, let me move on and make it very clear what the ambit of debate the opposition would like to stick to. Firstly, we are totally without a hint of doubt against this very motion. The primary factors being the usage of words like ban and glorify. Action, thriller, horror, comedy, drama, romance. These are some of the genres of movies. And do you know what's common? The presence of violence. Or in the terms of the proposition, glorified or unnecessary violence. In some cases, it may be to add to the narrative. In some cases, it is essential for the clear distinction between making what is glorifying and what is not. If today the proposition decides to ban all violence glorifying films, they should start off with Modern Times, released in the year 1936, which has a very violent Charlie Chaplin in it. But then, of course, putting a live man into a running machinery is not violent, it's just comedy. But does this term, this blanket statement of glorifying fall under that? I say no. I hope that the House is clear of the fact that this entire glorification is nothing but pointless beating of empty vessels. Cinema is an art form of expression. Writers, directors, in most cases, pick up issues or topics from the very pop culture and depicted in the cinema. The cinema, ladies and gentlemen, is not just a 2-hour-long video that you see with a tub of popcorn on your laps. It's a thought. It's an idea ages in the making, and it takes effort. But the opposition is right. Why try to understand when you can just ban? The proposition could counter this, and I think they did, with what about, let's say, the majority of senseless movies? Or I will give you an example. What about the majority of Telugu movies, which have meaningless violence and senseless physics violations? Those movies are senseless. They are the very reason that a common man decides to indulge in crime, because what else has a greater reach than cinema? Now pay attention, pay close attention. The Telugu film industry, no doubt, is a huge part of Indian mainstream cinema. Meanwhile, how many of you have seen or heard about a violent Gujarati movie in theaters? I'll presume not many. So quite obviously, Telugu movies have a greater reach at brainwashing people, brainwashing teenagers into criminals. It's very shocking how, I repeat, very shocking how Gujarat as of 2020 has a crime rate of 1011.4, while Andhra Pradesh shockingly just has 452.7, which is far lesser. My point is that shifting the reason for crime and distress from the aspects of low literacy, lack of jobs, improper facilities, and maladministration, and putting them or blaming them on the head of cinemas or movies, saying that the first thing that should be banned is that the violent aspects in movies, violent cinema, as if they are the main, if not the sole cause of violence among masses. You all talk about influence proposition, you talk about mental issues that are caused from watching such violence and violent movies, and then you promote the banning of screening of The Joker simply because it's too realistically violent. Understand, more than anything, the Joker's nihilism echoes that of hate groups in our own society, not those of Gotham City. I'm sure if the proposition even understood a bit of cinema and what the goal of any cinema is, they would have not approached the agenda in the way that they did. Quite unfortunate how the diction starts and ends at ban and does not even consider words such as subjective and understanding and the lines which come between something being subjective and otherwise. Inconsiderate of the future of cinema, the future of people, the Prime Minister kept on giving more and more arguments. You're not biting a part of the cake, but destroying the whole cake in a sense by using a vague and illogical term to substantiate your claims and explain your arguments better. Cinema is a major factor why we have been able to detail out our history, our roots, explain them better. You mentioned a movie like Dunkirk. According to your, let's say, to a certain subjective mind, you could have prevented showing any violence in the movie. You could have just started off with, this was how it happened, this is how it happened. Who decides that subjective, how much of subjective violence is there? That was not understood by arguments. And when you add the word ban to your arguments, there is no scope for understanding. To come to the conclusion of my speech, I would like to quote Roman Polanski, who directed movies like The Pianist. Cinema should make you forget that you are sitting in a theater. Blaming movies for representing facts and issues in their truest form will not just hinder expression, but hinder the people from being conscious about their very own surroundings. And this agenda is not in any way an attempt to find solution to an issue, but create a cloud further over an issue by presenting fabricated detailing, showing that everything is well, everything is okay, nothing is subjective, and it's all fine. Could we all agree that cinema acts as a getaway for people of various kinds, of people of various subjective preferences, various tastes? And limiting that based upon unclear arguments and points makes no sense at all. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case, but most definitely not my stance. Thank you.
Great. Round of applause for the leader of opposition, Advitya. Thank you for that speech, Advitya. Now, I would like to give 30 seconds to the opponents to think about rebuttals and for the adjudicators to score. Now I would like to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister of Government Side, Anushka. Anushka, please give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen and the stopwatch clearly. Great. So Anushka, your time starts now.
Good evening. Today, I, the Deputy Prime Minister, will be talking about the detrimental effects of violence in media and why it needs to be banned. The average American watches nearly 5 hours of video each day, nearly two-thirds of which, according to Nielsen Company, contains some physical violence. Violence has always been an integral part of cinema right from its inception. In fact, not only has violence been a key ingredient for hundreds of films, but it has also been romanticized. Violence acted out by the protagonist is often a sign of strength and courage, something to feel proud about, whereas a character unwilling to partake in violence is looked at as effeminate and cowardly. The justification of violence and its representation as something cool may influence adolescents to act out in order to impress their peers. Violence in Bollywood, particularly, has risen by so much in the last few decades that crores of rupees are pumped into every year to stylize and carelessly display destruction, cruelty, and gore. But a survey conducted asked people whether violence in movies could influence us. Majority of the response was no. However, if films can influence us on other aspects of our life, like what we wear, what kind of hairstyles we get, what brands of gadgets we use, where we holiday, and even how we approach potential love interests, why not violence? A 2002 report by the US Secret Service and the US Department of Education, which examined 37 incidents of targeted school shootings and school attacks from 1974 to 2000 in this country, found out that over half of the attackers demonstrated some interest in violence through movies, video games, books, and other media. Dhoom released in 2004 a film about a group of bikers that burgled banks and other public places, inspired a group of bikers in Kerala to rob a bank in 2007. The group stole gold and cash worth lakhs of rupees. However, this isn't new. The 1972 film starring Amitabh Bachchan, Bombay to Goa, inspired three working professionals to break into a safe in a warehouse. They admitted that they saw the film for reference. And on the contrary to what the Prime Minister said, recently there was also an incident in Japan where a man wearing the Joker's infamous purple suit with dyed lime green hair and mercilessly stabbed the passengers of the train. He then proceeded to light the train on fire. This man, clearly influenced by the movie Joker, committed arson and tried to murder people. This is a great example
Point of information.
Rejected. This is a great example of the viewer imitating the protagonist and a particular scene from a movie. In a recent court hearing of an incident where a teenager who was kidnapped and murdered his own sister, influenced by a crime television show, the honorable judge suggested that the exposure to violent content on television might provide a partial explanation for the crime. Similarly, in the aftermath of a barbaric terrorist attack on a school bus, many reports suggested that the killer took their inspiration from a recently released movie. There are also findings that suggest watching sexually aggressive films negatively influence the viewer's attitudes towards women. There's growing evidence that high exposure to fast-paced violent media can lead to changes in brain functions when processing violent images, including dampening of emotional responses to violence and decrease in certain types of executive control. With 90% of movies, 68% of video games, 60% of TV shows, and 15% of music videos having some form of violence is very concerning, especially when it comes to children. Children often like to imitate what they see on television and in films. They can't differentiate between fact and fiction until the age of 4. This might lead to them to view violence as an ordinary occurrence, affecting their sense of compassion. Children today can access media through traditional devices like television and portable devices like laptops and tablets. And knowing that they learn by mimicking adult behavior, they become easy targets of violence in media. When the heroes are constantly glamorized for their aggressiveness and brutal acts similar to the degree of the villains, but aren't being punished or facing the consequences of their actions, the children will get easily primed into thinking that this is good behavior. And with more access, children are also more likely to be exposed to violent content, like real life or cartoon, where force is being used and harm is being done to a person or character. Evidence shows that this can be detrimental to young children. Around the ages of 3 and 4, children begin to develop perceptions and expectations about the world around them. These views are strongly influenced by their daily experiences. If children are exposed to scenes of violence, they may develop a view of the world as a more dangerous place than it actually is. Cinematography is an element of human education. The visual and sound effects make modern movies more realistic. Movies encourage people, especially young people, to mimic the actions and behavior of the movie heroes. People constantly watching violent movies get aggressive, and inevitably, this aggression affects the people around
Point
them.
of information.
Rejected. While parental supervision and film certification rules help shield children to a large extent from objectionable content on television and films, the internet, by its very nature, is beyond regulation, and therefore there is no way to check the freedom availability of such harmful content. If we continue to turn a blind eye to this malmaze, soon a time will come when even those of us who consider ourselves immune to such acts of violence will become one of its victims. While freedom of media is extremely important and should be guarded, at the same time, responsibility should coexist with freedom. Steps should therefore be taken to ensure that at least the obviously harmful depiction of violence and crime on television or cinema is checked. By taking all this into account, the government believes that it's imperative for us to ban all movies that glorify violence. By banning such portrayal of violence, we can have a significant impact on the perception of violence of the viewer and inhibit the comprehension of brutality as an admirable and ideal quality. Thank you.
Great. Round of applause for the Deputy Prime Minister, Anushka. Thank you, Anushka, for that speech. Now I would like to give 30 seconds to the adjudicators and the opponent team. Great. Now I would like to welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Vanchit. Vanchit, can you please give me a thumbs up if you can see the stopwatch clearly?
Yes, I can. Am I both audible and visible?
Yes, you're audible. Great. So Vanchit, your time starts now.
I'm extremely sorry to say this, but I couldn't help observing a striking resemblance between the proposition members and a popular myth associated with ostriches. All they did was simply bury their heads in the sand, thinking that they averted all dilemmas by turning blind to them. It is like saying if you go and meditate in the mountains, the pollution levels would go down, humans would learn to love each other, and magically all the problems would solve. However, we all know this isn't the way practicality works. Good evening, esteemed members of the House. I, the Deputy Leader of Opposition, am here with a firm belief in my cause, which is to not ban movies that glorify violence. First things first, what is violence? As simple and dumb the question might seem, it is not. According to the prestigious Cambridge Dictionary, violence is, and I quote, actions or words which are intended to hurt people, any person. Any person with a rational mind would take seconds to realize when this definition is implied to ban something or anything at all, it would create utter havoc because of how this is subjective. Something might offend someone, and on the other hand, one might not. What we infer from this is that if violence is used as a basis to ban movies, it would censor them to an extent where movies would depict only a utopic world where everything is happy. And God forbid, what if someone is hurt by such misrepresentation of the world? I do not know how the side proposition would prevent the violence of their feelings and emotions. Again, quoting our no, thank you. Quoting our very dear Prime Minister, how much violence is too much violence? Well, to answer that question, I'm pretty sure I can't. And nor can any other person for a ton of people, because I assure you, people have different views, different choices, and most importantly, different preferences. This very fact substantiates the fact that generalizing people into something which they do not acknowledge is unacceptable. Another important aspect is how respected Prime Minister went to define this violence, which is too extreme, or which I'm again not sure how does he refer to extreme, because let me remind the House, or as of yet, emotions cannot be quantified. It would be indefined to say that it's cut off 10 pounds of violence, then again, there might be someone considering this act of cutting gruesome enough. Now, breaking the ice before it melts. Side proposition laid forward their arguments in a manner which almost succeeded in concealing some very important aspects. But fear not, because I am here to fill that void and point out how this ideal of theirs is ridden with loopholes. Firstly, it is of significant importance to comprehend what we imply when we say we ban movies which glorify violence. It would, in its truest essence, basically ban majority of the movie, if not all, because of how several points already iterated by the leader of opposition. And now when we ban these many movies, understand that there are consequences, a price tag, which not just the proposition side or the opposition side, but the entire nation will have to pay in numerous ways. Allow me to explain. In India alone, the net worth of the film industry is estimated to be about $196 billion according to the fiscal estimates of 2022. And these, ladies and gentlemen, are pure facts without any twists and turns. Another report on the economic impact of the film industry in India showed that this sector provided both directly and indirectly to 1.8 million individuals, 1.8 million individuals in its employment in fiscal year 2019. When the proposition members come up and lay claims, I hope they do realize that behind a movie, hundreds of members are employed. They spend their entire life specializing in the field. It is their very bread and butter. And to simply snatch it away is not only a subject of mockery, but also treachery to humankind. By now, if you still disagree, because these facts apparently do not directly affect you, let me remind the House of a majority source of government, which is entertainment tax. And when you ban a majority of these films, so does the revenue from this revenue aspect cut down by a huge margin, which will affect each and every individual. Another important point which must see the light of this debate is productivity level. It is a well-established fact across all human resources departments that entertainment plays a major role in maintaining the productivity level of the employees. By now, you must have already understood the extensive implications of imposing such a vague and blanket ban on movies glorifying violence. It is ironic to see how on one hand, proposition comes up with constructives emphasizing the importance of human ideals, their development, absolutely cornering off an important point, which is freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Because movies aren't merely a cast, the dialogues, but a script which reflects the very society we live in, our very own past, an integral part of our vibrant history, whatever you might feel, even the present, and not allowing its appropriate representation does not only corrupt it, but also disrespects human cultures and their values.
Yeah.
And let me, sorry,
Yeah.
and let me just, no, thank you. And let me just remind the Deputy Prime Minister when she says that children from 3 years to 14 years are exposed to such content. There exists a term known as censor committees, which is doing their job, allowing movies, labeling movies as mature as for adults. And I hope the Deputy Prime Minister understands that this concept is present all across the globe, even on the internet, where there exists a term known as parental controls. It truly disheartens me how the side proposition, while putting forth their points, portrayed sheer ignorance to a team of artists whose hard work goes behind an entire movie. their thought, their freedom of expression, and them as an entity. As much as I'd expected side proposition to use reports in the speeches from decades ago, as we already saw in various speeches, quoting a report from 2002, neglecting the modern norms, where both the film industry and the level of understanding amongst people have changed. 2 decades is a lot. With that, I rest my case, but certainly not my stance. Thank you.
Round of applause for the Deputy Leader of Opposition, that was Vanchit. Thank you, Vanchit, for your speech. Now, I would like to give 30 seconds to the opponents to think about rebuttals and to the adjudicators. Now, I would like to welcome the government whip from government side, that's Arunima Singh. Arunima, can you please give me a thumbs up if you can see the stopwatch? Great. So Arunima, your time starts now.
Greetings from the government whip to this honorable house. I would like to sum up the government stance by saying that we realize that removing any and all violence from movies is not only unrealistic, but also unnecessary, which is why the government only wishes that movies that glorify violence, that is, movies that have a non-existent moral compass or don't show violence in a cruel light, rather they exalt it. Movies that use so much violence that the rational viewer wonders, was this really necessary? Only such movies should be banned. For example, Rais. It glorified gangsters, violence, and crime, or The Joker, which does the same with insanity, violence, and chaos. The government, the opposition says that the end game glorifies violence. It does not. Using the principle of proportionality stated by the PM, it clearly does not. The story also contains a strong sense of morality. It doesn't unnecessarily spread violence. And while he is right when he says that banning can be subjective, to which the government would like to say a lot of stuff in today's society is subjective. Say censoring movies to an extent, say family law, all of this is subjective. Movies are regularly censored and banned if they are discriminatory or incite violence against a particular community. Do you think that this is an unreasonable restriction on freedom of expression, considering all the data stated by the government? How are movies that glorify violence justified in the name of freedom of expression? Rejected. The deputy leader of opposition was talking about economic effects of banning movies that glorify violence, as if that would somehow end up ending the whole film industry. I also find it admirable that how the opposition completely disregarded the mental effects and the mental health as if they didn't exist. He said that the movie Joker is art and does not incite violence. Yet it somehow ended up inspiring a 24-year-old Japanese youth to dress like the Joker, stab people, and light a whole train carriage on fire. A number of similar examples have already been provided by the Deputy Prime Minister. The leader of opposition went on and on with arguments, but no solution was provided. What are we to do then? Given all the research and studies that movies are actually making the youth violent, are we just supposed to sit around? As rightly stated by the Prime Minister, by disguising cruelty and violence in movies as attractive, cool, and engaging, it allows the audience to deny the reality of what they're seeing in order to disassociate themselves from the gruesome reality. The government has already emphasized the effect of such movies on children, teenagers, as well as adults. Children of all ages can get negatively influenced by such movies as they may lead to desensitization. Desensitization leads to bullying, and with the recent increase in the use of mobile phones, text messaging, email, and chat rooms via youth, they have opened up new venues for social interaction in which aggression can occur and the youth can be victimized. Not to mention, glorifying violence also leads to the normalization of gore crimes. As the Prime Minister stated in his speech, empirical evidence, that is, evidence based on experiments rather than theory, of the past half century has again and again proved that exposure to violence on television, movies, and most recently in video games increases the risk of violent behavior on the viewer's part, just as growing up in an environment filled with real violence increases the risk of violent behavior. Yet such movies affect the teenager hardest. Teenagers are at a phase of their life when they're finding themselves, their personalities, their values, their group, etc. With parents that try to steer them on the right path, but with role models that routinely not only engage in but also glorify violence, a teen is left in a conflicting and confused state of mind. The opposition completely disregards this, as the government has been stressing from the beginning. Children learn by observation. A person's social behavior is controlled to a great extent by the interplay of the current situation with the person's emotional state, their schemas about the world, their normative beliefs about what is appropriate, and their scripts for social behavior that they have learned. During this period, children's social cognitive schemas about the world around them are also elaborated. For example, extensive observation of violence has been shown to bias children's world schemas toward attributing hostility to others' actions. Such attributions, in turn, increase the likelihood of children behaving aggressively. Consequently, observed behaviors are imitated long after they are observed. I request the opposition to ask themselves, what are we teaching our children, who are to be the future of our society? Even adults are not left unaffected. A number of examples have been provided by the Deputy Prime Minister. They stress on that. And while I understand the argument of the government, of the opposition about curtailing freedom of the people, it is important to note that we aren't completely free in the first place. A civilized society can never be completely free. According to the Indian Constitution, threat to public safety and health is a reasonable restriction. And if a restriction on freedom is reasonable, it is justified and stays. A research paper published under the National Center for Biotechnology Information, USA, states the effect sizes for many common threats to public health, in which media violence also makes an appearance. Not surprisingly, media violence is on the second number after cigarettes. The government regularly bans videos that incite violence. How are these movies any different? Given those facts, the government believes that it is, in fact, just to have bans on movies that glorify violence. The government also talked about putting age limit on online platforms. Almost all movies in the wake of the virus are being released on online streaming platforms, most of which do not have the mechanism for age limit or parental controls, or even if they do, children often find ways to surpass that. It is really not that hard. What good does any age setting limit do then? The government implores the opposition to look at the bigger picture in all of this. By promoting such gore cinema, we are promoting a culture of romanticizing violence, juvenile delinquency, conflicted morals, and increasing crime rates. It is high time that we move on from lauding excessively violent cinema and put a stop to the movies that corrupt the young minds of our society. Thank you.
Great. Round of applause for the government whip, Arunima Singh. Thank you, Arunima, for that speech. Now I would like to give 30 seconds to the adjudicators and the opposition whip. All right, now let's welcome the opposition whip, Soham. Soham, can you please give me a thumbs up if you can see the stopwatch? Great. All right, so Soham, your time starts now.
It'll be so very hard to follow that excellent speech by the government whip, but I'll try nonetheless. Let me remind the Prime Minister and the whip that to glorify is to celebrate. The proposition's bias against mindless violence as glorifying and historic war movies, which are celebrated by nations as something which we must compromise for. And it's fine to watch. I would like to reiterate our team's stance. The fact that the proposition's definition of to glorify is as vague as the difference between shallots and onions. And the fact that the Avengers' solution to Thanos is to fight him instead of maybe setting up a negotiating table is glorifying violence to me. Thank you. I would like to know what teenagers you're talking about. You stand on your high pedestal, understanding, making our conclusions yourself. For some reason, I do not even understand. I was raised watching violent movies like Top Gun, Watchmen, etc., and even Rajnikant sometimes. And I would say the same for my friends and their friends. But funnily enough, we haven't yet murdered someone. If it is that small of a minority, as you mentioned, of this Japanese child of the whip, maybe they need professional help for something already ingrained in their minds. They were not triggered by the violence on movies. They were triggered by just about anything, and bullying at school can also be one of them. If you expect that just by banning violent movies, mental problems would just disappear, I am sorry, but you're dreadfully wrong. So, knock knock. You have heart disease, high sodium, and so much fat, you could cook a whole human with it. We must ban the fast food industry now. By the logic of the proposition, even though I should have been the responsible guardian to see what my bot consumes from the world, from the internet, I will still blame everyone but myself, is what I observed from the proposition. The Deputy Prime Minister explains how they blame cinema for the numerous school shootings in America without even mentioning gun laws even once, the main suspect for these atrocities. This is just to show what a slippery rabbit hole the proposition have dug themselves into. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Soham Yogi and I'll be serving as your opposition whip this session. I just wish to take a moment to let you know, realize how ridiculous the motion sounds. To ban movies which glorify violence. So we should ban the historic war movies. We should ban movies which show sexual abuse and harassment. We should ban the Salman Khan movies, which always hit lesser than expected. And we should also ban Avengers, the movies which are made for children. When you're pursuing for this motion, you're almost immediately denying history. Gandhi did half of the work done with the non-violence touche, but well, the British did not stop to use their hands and guns. So I guess our children, or even the uneducated masses of India, would not ever know India's independence story or about Gandhi. And how about you explain what terrorism is, or what Hitler and Mussolini were all about, or how the United States had bombed 2 Japan cities out of existence? Do we just forget about them? If a story went like Hitler was a very bad person who lured Jews into a cave using sunflowers dipped in chocolate sauce, and the hungry Jews followed him and they never returned, I do not think that is the most appropriate way we should educate our children. Nor can we say that the United States used a glitter bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, even though I would like to know how that would look like. CGI does wonders nowadays. Not to mention of how Indians are major consumers of the commercial masala movies, with violence sprawled throughout its runtime, which star the clumsiest of actors in Bollywood with a bad plot, bad acting, and even worse directing. Just so they are a guilty pleasure of mine. Yikes. Anyway, it still partakes in about most of the box office collections. And yes, Madam Deputy Prime Minister, the crores of rupees pumped into Bollywood on these masala movies, that is, these collections of these box offices, are what thousands of people are reliant on. And I'm not talking about the actors or directors, the already rich ones, the stunt artists who would lose their jobs if this ban was to take place. A fight coordinator whose job literally has, yes, ma'am.
Right. So I talked about the money, particularly being spent on violence. I never said that by banning violence, you wouldn't spend the money on something. And it doesn't mean that the workers wouldn't get the money. It just means that it would be invested in something other than violence.
Ma'am, India is already facing unemployment, and these stunt artists and fight coordinators whose literal jobs are to coordinate violence. If you just ban violent movies, I'm sure that they will lose their jobs. They will have to lift sacks of bricks in some place else. They would not have any job in the cinema industry then. And it is the same for thousands more. The movie industry has major stakes in the taxes of the government. And when you remove that source, you cut off one of the limbs of an initially organized, now unkept machinery. And of course, even if such an atrocity was to ever happen, rejected. If it would be clear that banning would not work. If alcohol is banned, people will get it illegally. And drugs are banned and people still get it illegally. Do you want your children or your peers to surf through the mysterious dark web or stay and wait in long, dark, cramped alleys, waiting for a shady hooded figure to exchange a Disney movie which was banned due to the prince getting into a fight with a snowman? And while this is happening, beside a drug deal of two equally shadier persons trading cocaine for some high dollar. Do you get how ridiculous this sounds? And do not get me started on the fact that the movies which use violence use it to educate the viewers on social evils. They do it because of compulsion, for protection, and in the hopes of a better future. The movies like Django Unchained or the Telugu movie Asuran used violence to put the spotlight on these problematic themes of society. Be it the racism in North America through the ages for Django Unchained, or the still rampant caste discrimination in southern India, portrayed extremely well in Asuran. All of it has major educational points, which if the children do not see, they would be missing out on life lessons and proper ethics. Art films are not a walk through the meadows. It is not sucking on succulent apples picked from the orchard. It is not staring at the constellations with classical music playing in the background. Let me add to that. Violence. Violence is a form of art. It reminds me of an old Tarantino interview. He talked of how showing violence was just fun to him. While violence is fun, do not be confused with Tarantino's stance on violence. It cannot be broken down or boiled to just something simple as fun. Violence is a complex emotion. It is a feeling that you express when you have no alternative. To deny man's right to watch violence is to deny his freedom of speech, his freedom of expression, and his right to live. It cannot be simplified to a punch, get hit, and die. It is not as simple as that. Movies have portrayed violence as a factor or a gateway to many objectives. We use violence to protect others from harm. We use violence to protect ourselves. We use violence to fuel our rage for the perfect revenge story. We use violence to show what it is and what has been and what is ours and what's not. And we show violence to educate. Without education of the real world, where every street has a history of rape, every corner has ancient blood spilt on it, and every single foundation has required the dead bodies the corpses are made to build. This is the real world, and to deny movies and media to show that is to deny reality. Thank you.
Great. Round of applause for the opposition whip, Soham. Thank you, Soham, for that speech. Now, I would like to give both the teams 1 minute before reply speeches. And I would like to inform the adjudicators that we would have the opposition reply speech first. So the speaker who would be coming next, Advityo, would be from team opposition. And then we would have a reply speech from proposition side, the government side, which would be from Vincent. And I would like all the participants to please keep their camera on and be seated and not leave their places while preparing for the reply speech. Thank you. All right. So now I would like to welcome the reply speaker of opposition side, that's Advityo. Advityo, you would get 4 minutes to give your reply speech with no point of information from the opponents. But I won't be able to give you time beyond 4 minutes. So please make sure that you do not cross time because unfortunately I'll have to mute you then. All right. So make sure you finish within 4 minutes. Same applies to you, Vincent. All right. Make sure that your speech doesn't go beyond 4 minutes and no point of information will be offered to reply speakers. Now, Advityo, your time starts now.
To prove the first point as to why I believe this debate was quite clearly lost by side proposition is that I was very happy that they took note of my incident of mentioning Joker in it. And they went on and said how Japan it had happened. Let me give you a small detail, which perhaps most of you won't be aware of. They use this term Joker, this killer again and again and again. This thing happened because the man was suffering from losing his friends, losing his families. And due to the 1950 nearly so many years ago, laws present in Japan, there was not proper supervision to actually help him. And understand that the Joker movie was released that year in October. And as far as I know, June comes before October, and in no way is that a reason to say that the Joker movie was the sole factor. Coming to laws, coming to management, coming to administration, it was funny that they mentioned the United States of America. And I quote, high school killings. What is high school? Nearly about the age of 18 in United States of America. When can a child buy gun? 18 years of old. When was this mentioned? Not at any point of time in their speech. All they said that it was movie, and so on and so on. Not providing reports as to why in any of these cases, these person, if they had previous issue in the back which could not be addressed. And let me come, this was the very first point I started off with: fabrication, misinterpretation. These were the two things that they did throughout this entire debate. They did through the very first speech, not making you understand as to what were the behind reasons. Was it fault of the administration? Was it fault of the parents or support systems? No. Now let me tell you, when they talk about the presence of, let's say, how to make a child understand that it is violent or not, when he's what is necessary violence. Tell me how you explain a 3-year-old child that Black Widow died because it was necessary to support the movie finishing. So you have to understand that it was necessary violence and not otherwise. I think that is not how it works, and that is not how it will help. And understanding that this line, this subjective line, is something which is blatantly ignored when you put it under the bracket column of necessity. Now telling you why we won, why we clearly won. Firstly, economy, which they talked about how economy does not matter and how it is not actually getting affected if you do that and so on. Wrong, nothing more. Moving on there, we talked about expression. We talked about expressing. Hey, you come and watch a movie because I made it on. I cannot watch it because violence is there in the movie. That is not how it works. When you say that you are giving a platform, you're giving cinema to express, you're giving them a platform to express their own art form, and understand that that is why most importantly, this is something that is needed in this aspect. Also, keep it understand that parental control or internet thing, you mention video games, you mention internet, you mention social media, there is a word bracketed, and the most important, movie. We are not talking about social media. We are not talking about it. Yes, you can say movies are present on online streaming platforms, but understand those are totally different as compared to the wide spectrum of internet which is present. I think we made it very clear to you that restricting movies to start off, giving your explanation that is violence, that is not how it works, ladies and gentlemen, and that is not how it's supposed to be, because a movie at the end of the day is something, it's a creation. Judging a creation based upon how necessary it is, how subjective it is, makes no sense at all. And why I believe that what we have said, that a movie is creation of a particular individual and it's an expression. Let it be that way. Thank you. I hope I could make you understand.
Great. Round of applause for the opposition reply speaker. Thank you, Advitya, for that speech. Now, I would like to welcome the reply speaker from the government side, Vincent. Vincent, your time starts now.
The motion is no doubt very controversial. The beauty of it all, though, is that unlike all the other motions we have come across till now, this is affecting a much wider audience more directly, from kids to teens, from teens to adults. Everyone likes watching movies. So shouldn't we, as citizens of a democratic country, of a progressive world, have the right to make whatever we want, and at the same time watch whatever we want? This, coincidentally, is a major argument of the opposition side, and they make a very valid point. We have been given rights and freedoms we have been given rights and the freedom to exercise those rights. But the same government which has set these rights has blocked many anti-national clips and videos that incite violence. They are not available through legal means, and blocking them is the right thing to do. So why? Because viewers will get misled by them. Just apply the same thought process to the to movies. The whole argument today was essentially between goodwill and free will. What is good for the society? Violence? Certainly not. A community with violence will not sustain, it will delve into chaos. Another major argument brought out by the opposition was that if we don't glorify violence, movies like Gandhi and other various war movies wouldn't exist. As I said in my speech earlier, these movies do not qualify as glorification of violence. I totally 100% agree that we should teach our citizens of the country and the people of the world the sacrifices our ancestors made for our sake. Movies which glorify violence have redundant scenes where extensive bloodshed is used. And very good examples of these are Bonnie and Clyde, Scarface, Evil Dead. There are so many movies which left the viewers traumatized. The opposition was outright convoluting and twisting our claims. And then comes the argument that is just fiction. Yes, I agree, it's just fiction. But it's also on the big screen. There are people who are going to watch it. There are people who are impacted by it and not in a positive way. As I said earlier in my speech, what you see and hear will translate into your own life. Like it happened to a number of people, like the deputy prime minister was talking about. Just increasing the age rating does not solve any problem, because these movies which glorify violence not only these movies glorify violence not only to children but also to adults. And always keep that point in mind. You are never too old or never too mature to get deluded by what you see on the screen. And as young people, I'm sure we have all seen some of the other R-rated film, because it's practically impossible for it to be blocked from kids. Then there came the argument that violent movies is just a reflection of what is going on presently in the society, with the example of Joker. But in what way is the community burning down buildings, shooting a talk show host in the face, exploding cars, and running around wearing Joker masks? Another question that you might be wondering is that a lot of examples of movies given by the proposition are hits. Banning them will be a destruction of works of art. Yes, but again, if you apply the principle of proportion here, you see that what you are trying to achieve isn't worth the sacrifices the viewers have to make. Yes, it is an easy topic to it's not an easy topic to discuss, especially when there's so many different views on it. But as a proposition, we believe that if violence can be conditioned up by propaganda, it can be conditioned down. It is the conditioning down that we want to focus on by banning movies which glorify violence. And as Nelson Mandela said, people must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes much more naturally to mankind than hate. We have a question in front of us: whether we ban the movies which glorify violence. I think you and I both know the answer. Thank you.
Great. Round of applause for Vincent. Thank you, Vincent, for that speech. First of all, round of applause for everyone. I think this has been an amazing round, and each and every debater was so confident, trying to prove their points strongly, firmly believing in their points, and giving reasons and evidence to back up each and every claim that they had. Well done, guys. Both the teams did an amazing job. Now, I would like the adjudicators to send me the scores in the private chat, and I would like to hand over to Ms. Dipanshi to share her experience and enlighten everybody about debating and her experience teaching kids at Learnico.
Thank you, Ms. Khushi. Before that, shall we join the breakout room to discuss the feedback?
What we would be doing, Ms. Dipanshi, is you would be sending the scores to me, and I would evaluate, and after that would be announcing the results.
All right.
If there are any changes or are there any problems, then we would be definitely joining the link if needed.
All right. I'll just send you the score and will share my experience.
Definitely. So till then, I would like to know from Advitya. Advitya, can you please share your experience? How have these rounds been for you and your experience in debating, and what all you've learned so far?
Yeah. So firstly, I started off debating. I started off MUNing when I was in class 7, I believe, in class 7, or when I was in 6. Right now, I'm studying in the 10th standard. And over the time period, including this debate, what I have understood is that sometimes, even if you don't agree, what it has made me understand, if you don't agree with something, what doing a debate, what talking to a group of people in a debate, what it does, it helps you understand both sides of the coin quite equally. And I believe these past 3 days, they have added on to my overall understanding of topics, overall understanding of how to interact with individuals. And it was a great experience. 3 rounds, then this final talking to. Firstly, for me, talking is perhaps above all the everything, all the talents that humankind had ever got. It's above everything. So it was a very fun experience to actually meet so many people and understand how other people think about a topic, and more so not treat this as a debate, but treat this as understanding through several different minds or several different viewpoints. So thank you for hosting this and for making it something that I really enjoy.
Thank you so much, Advitya, for that experience and that, good words, kind words that you've given. And it has been pleasure to have debaters like you in the competition. Vincent, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I was very surprised when they like took us for the second round. I was extremely surprised because it's my first time debating in this. I mean, it's my first time, not my first time debating in general. I've done like 1 month. That's all, but 1 month. I was very surprised, and all our teammates first time debating in this sort of format, and this experience is priceless. Honestly, like Aditya said, I hope I pronounce his name right. Yeah, so like Aditya said, is meeting new people, learning how they speak. Is mostly this competition has been about learning from others, and I came in as like as thinking I was underconfident, but then I realized that I'm not. It's just a perception. So it's been an amazing, beautiful experience. It's really great. I really want to thank you, all of you, the Learnico staff and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vincent, for those kind words. And you were very confident. You were a good speaker. You were a great debater today. Now, I would like Anushka to share her experience.
Yeah, well, this is also my first time, and I think something that I really liked about this in particular was that we got to debate in teams, which was something that I didn't really do before. And my teammates, Vincent and Arunima, it was also their first time debating in this style in particular. And when we had the discussions and meetings prior to the actual debates, it was a very good learning experience for me. They're really fantastic debaters, and it's also really nice to see other debaters like Advitya, Soham, Vanchit. They did really nice, and something that I really appreciated about their speeches was the element of humor, which is something that I really enjoyed. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Anushka, for those kind words. Now, I would like to hear from Arunima. Arunima, what was your view? You gave a nice whip speech today. You gave really good points. What's your experience?
Thank you, ma'am, for that. I must say that my experience here is really priceless. It was also really fun. I'm always nervous before we actually start debating, but when we actually are debating, it's a really enjoyable process. Also, something I really like about how we're debating right now is after every round, we get so much feedback. Like, I'm really happy that we get that rather than just telling us who has won. So we are able to improve on that from the next round. And also the opposition team, you guys were so good. Like, so good. And Vincent, Anushka, I didn't think I would get such a nice team. Like, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
That's so lovely. I love how, we form teams here and then, everybody gets so close to their speakers, their partners, their team members, and the way they support each other. And that's evident in your speeches as well, the way you support each other during your speeches. Well done. Thank you, Arunima, for that. Now, I would like to know from Vanchit.
Yeah, sure. It's like I've been debating since like past 3 years. I started in class 7, but then all of a sudden, this 2 year void that was created, I haven't attended even a single debate or let's say even a month, which was so interactive. Like this entire 2 weeks or behind the scenes, like so much anxiousness, so much tension, and then all of it boils down to this one single hour, which is so impactful, so powerful, and we get to learn so much at the end, because how each and every adjudicator shares their feedback, and with each day, like every round I saw, like I learned something new and grew through this entire process, seeing different people from different perspectives, and was such an wholesome, like an entirely wholesome event, I would say.
Great. Thank you so much, Vanchit. Now, I would like to know from Soham.
Yeah, it was an amazing time here. Like I can like absolutely relate with the proposition that this is like my second time debating, but I was absolutely so nervous before every debate. And then you know what I had to do? Like suppose you saw it that I used aggression in my speeches. So I always have to scream into my pillow so I can get that aggression on. I jog, I exercise before the debate so that I'm aggressive and then I can scream at you guys. Yes, basically like that. And yeah, like I got the best team I could have ever asked for. Even I am terrible at researching, so I always just like bug Aditya and Vanchit, like give me some facts, give me some arguments, what am I supposed to write? And that, and the learning course staff and the judge, the adjudicators right here, they have always pushed me, drove me, you know, like, because whenever I do some like you know like give a speech, I'm always like bad, like, you know, feel bad about myself because I did like terrible. But then they are like, you know, uplift me, you know, push me, drive me. I don't know. I'm terrible at, you know, telling about my experiences. But yes, that's about it. I'm sorry.
No, you've been really good, Soham. The way you expressed yourself while you were giving a speech was amazing. And I think you learn from these kind of competitions, right? When you get good feedback, when there's a little criticism, constructive criticism, I must say, we learn how to progress. So, Soham, that's very nice and kind of you that you take every feedback coming from your adjudicators positively. Now, I would like to know from Ms. Dipanshi. Ms. Dipanshi, if you can share your experience about debating.
Sure. First of all, thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And I have always admired my connection with Learnico. Like teaching students, I have not taught students debating. I have taught college students in my college regarding debating, and it's completely different experience there and here. So I believe teaching such young minds and how beautifully they adopt things, they acknowledge things, it's commendable. Like I think I have judged most of them in previous rounds as well, and listening to them was truly a bliss. Like I could not even imagine myself in class 8th and 9th and 10th and giving such beautiful arguments. They are able to grasp those things, and this is truly a good thing, because debating is a thing that I believe is a lifelong skill. It helps you in every profession, it helps you in every work that you are doing, because it actually enhances not only your communication skills but also your analytical and logical skills. So that reasoning is really what is required in our life, in whatever ways we have to go. So that's all about my debating. If I talk about my current debating experience, I have been debating since my class 8, and I won't say that I was such an amazing debater back then. I grew, I learned slowly, and now it's been more than 8 to 10 years that I'm debating, and I still enjoy debating. I still, if I am allowed, I still like to participate in debates, in MUNs and parliamentary debates. But I would say in all of those formats of debates, parliamentary debate is why one of my favorite, because you don't get this much time in any other format of debate that you get in a parliamentary debates. For example, if there are happening 3 preliminary rounds in a day, you are getting so much experience of not only speaking but also the feedback. As I think one of the participants said here when I was listening, that you get so much feedback to improve yourself, to work on yourself, that it actually helps you to grow as a person. So that's all about me, and it was really wonderful to listen to you today. And all the best for your results.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Dipanshi. And it's been commendable the way you have achieved so much at such a young age. And Learnico is definitely fortunate to have experts like you on board who try to always, at an early age, teach kids how to debate and the skills for debating and public speaking. Mr. Naveen Taneja, sir, would you like to enlighten the kids and everybody who's listening to you right now, your experience dealing with children and everything about debating, everything?
Yeah, ma'am. It was a wonderful experience. And I have been judging so many competitions, inter-school, inter-house, as well as inter-school competitions. And I have taken my students to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha also to see the sessions over there. And I wish these students are so good, they could be there also. So they can explain the things in a very nice way. As Albert Einstein said, that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. But they have explained it very nicely, and we have also understood it also. So I just want to say that such competitions are so good and a very good initiative you have taken. And please continue this, and the students are going to learn a lot. And it was very difficult for us to judge. I don't know means what you will think about what I have sent the marks to you, but from my side, all the participants were very good. And it has been very difficult for me to say who was first and who was second, but they have done very nicely. And Madam Dipanshi, I think you have taught them very nicely and explained them all the things very correctly. And the reasoning was very good. The speeches were persuasive and the delivery was wonderful. I enjoyed the session. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm always there if you need any help from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very kind of you. And yes, I think for kids to come on such floors at such a young age to express themselves so nicely, that itself is commendable and an achievement in itself. It requires great amount of strength to confidently express yourself in front of so many people and give your opinions and views with nice, strong, analytical points. So that itself is great. Now, Mr. Avik Kumar, sir, would you like to express and give your experience about
Sure. Thank you so much. First of all, it was a pleasure hearing all of you speak. I mean, you really did a stellar job. It was quite clear that you are well prepared and the passion was also shining through for most of you. I mean, content-wise, definitely. And you had a clear strategy, especially team opposition were wonderful in rebutting the points. But all six of you, I think the passion was shining through the way you used your visual cues also. It was wonderful watching you. And yeah, I mean, as already said, these are wonderful skills and which can be honed and developed and so forth. I mean, each of you had an individual style. Like Vincent had a wonderful leadership quality he brought into it. He had a very statesman-like quality, and same can be said for Aditya as well. Vanchit and Soham, I especially enjoyed the kind of aggression, bit of sarcasm you brought into it. It really, I mean, brought the debate onto life. There's a cricket match going on. I forgot all about that. It was wonderful hearing the hitting out from both of you. And Anushka, obviously, I mean, you were well researched. The kind of vocabulary you used was quite impressive. Arunima, especially, is something that I would like to commend you on. The way basically you were articulating, you have great control over your oratory style, and that's something that gave you a lot of points. So each of you really brought your own style and your own flavor to the speech. And that's why it really contributed this good ebb and flow. And at times, I mean, it was difficult to choose a clear winner, I think, and it was entertaining. It was not just informative, but it was entertaining. I think that's the biggest compliment I can give to all of you. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, sir, for those kind words. I think everybody did a great job. Now, I would like to give a normal, general, quick feedback to everybody. I think you all gave great speeches. I think each and every speaker came up with amazing points, some points that I wasn't even aware about. So thank you for enlightening us like this. Also, I think proposition team, great. I think you guys supported each other very nicely. You all tried to build up arguments on each other's claims, which is what I really find appreciating, because you supporting your team members is very important. The whip, as I said, Arunima, as I also complimented you while I was introducing you, I really liked how you tried to very confidently lay down points of your team and support your team's points and prove why your team stance is correct. and that was really commendable. Opposition team, as Mr. Avik Kumar sir already said, that the way you tried to add sense of humor to your speech was really good. The way you confidently tried to add on good sense of humor, because it's very difficult to make people laugh during debate speeches. So if you can do that, that's really a big compliment that sir has given you. So great job, guys. And I think the whip, you really came up with good points, supported your team's points. And also the reply speeches made me understand, both the reply speeches made me understand why their team's points are correct. And they also gave very strong rebuttals. Just one suggestion, a small constructive criticism, you can take it as, I think if you would have asked point of informations to each other even more, that would be more challenging for both the teams, right? So try to challenge each other as much as possible, especially the opposition team. The burden lies on you to defend yourselves, right? So the more point of informations you ask, the more you can challenge the proposition team, especially the prime minister, when the prime minister is, defining the motion, coming up with strong points. I think it's very important to challenge them by point of informations. So what I thought could have been more, challenging would be if you all could have asked each other more point of informations. Apart from that, great job, guys. You all did an amazing job. Now, I would like you all to excuse me for 2 minutes so that I can calculate and announce the winning team. All right? So just 2 minutes, guys, just 2 minutes. All right. So I do have the scores in hand and I do have the winning team's name with me. But before that, it's not about winning or losing. Round of applause again for all the speakers for doing a great job. You all were amazing. Okay. So each and every debater here was great. All right. And also, I would like to thank Learnico for giving everybody, even us, the opportunity to witness such amazing debaters on floor. I think we should have such competitions more like this. And thank you, Learnico, for giving everybody the opportunity to come to such a platform and helping everybody to express themselves and learn these debating skills. Now, the winning team without much of delay is Team Opposition. So round of applause for Team Opposition. You guys have won the final round. And now to announce the best speaker. Okay. Should I wait more or should I announce? What should I do? Announce? Announce? Okay. So the best speaker for today's final LQ debate championship is Soham. So round of applause for Soham for being the best speaker. Soham, would you like to say something?
I'm terrible at telling all my experiences, so I don't know what I'm supposed to say. But yes, thanks everyone, thanks my team. Like most of what I said was from my team, so it was just them speaking through my mouth. So not really me.
That's really sweet of you to compliment your team for contributing towards your speech, but you get best speaker for many criterias and parameters, Soham. So you should also appreciate yourself for taking efforts and achieving such a nice position in the finals. So congratulations, Soham, for being the best speaker, and congratulations, Team Opposition, for winning today's final round. And congratulations, Team Proposition, for being such nice competitors. It was a very close competition, as Mr. Naveen Taneja said, and that's true. I have the scores in hand, and I know that it was a very close competition. And with you guys not having much experience in debating and being such good debaters today was commendable. So Team Proposition, good job there, all right? So with that, we are done with today's final competition. And thank you so much, Learnico, for giving everybody the opportunity for witnessing such nice debaters. With that, we are done with the competition. Congratulations, Team Opposition again. And congratulations, Soham. The winning prize for team that has won is cash prize of rupees 3,000. So congratulations, guys. And for the runner-ups, it's rupees 1,500. So congratulations, Team Proposition, for being the runner-ups. And the best speaker gets 800 as the cash prize. So congratulations, Soham, for winning as the best speaker for today. With that, I would like to thank all the adjudicators for witnessing and coming forward to adjudicate the competition today. It has been a pleasure for Learnico to have such nice adjudicators on floor. So thank you, Ms. Dipanshi, Mr. Naveen Taneja, and Mr. Avik Kumar for being adjudicators for the final round. And thank you so much, debaters and the audience, for coming forward to the final rounds. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope I see you all soon. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
All the best.
All the best, everyone. Bye.